Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Horror Mine. My name is Vic Shy, and this is the Scare Score, where I break down horror movies and rate them on how scary I think they are. In this episode, I'll be going over the most requested movie in Horror Mine history, the 2006 Filipino horror film, SUKOB. I'll be going over the events that take place throughout the film while breaking down the scares and rating them on how scary they are or attempt to be. Before we dive deep into this film, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, Raid Ant and Roach Killer. Just kidding, I don't have a sponsor for this video. This is without a doubt one of the best Filipino horror films I've covered on the channel. But how scary is it? Sit back and relax and join me as we explore SUKOB and tally up the Scare Score. Our movie begins with shots of old houses that have an eerie feel to them. It's the classic 2000s horror movie intro that I always enjoy. We meet our main characters, Sandy and Dale, soon to be newlyweds, and their entire family. Sandy is portrayed by actress Chris Aquino, who also starred in the very popular Filipino horror film Feng Shui and its sequel. And yes, Feng Shui 2 will be getting a Scare Score soon. Everyone seems super friendly and are excited about the upcoming wedding. Dale's mom is very superstitious and has been trying her best for the couple to avoid certain superstitions that might bring bad luck. Sandy temporarily stays in her childhood home and we meet her mother, Tessie. Dale heads to his bachelor party and the film's title appears on screen. Sandy hears a strange noise outside her bedroom window, which plays a significant role throughout the film. It turns out to be her neighbor Caesar, who is a caretaker for the house next door. She asks about her childhood friend named Helen and learns some terrible news. Helen, along with her husband and their entire family, died under mysterious circumstances. We then get a really nice ominous shot of Sandy looking into Helen's room. We learn from Sandy's mom that Helen's wedding was cursed. Helen's father passed away and she was advised to postpone the wedding for 1 year. She didn't listen to the warning and her entire family either died or went missing. The house is now considered haunted and has been up for sale ever since. This is why Dale's mom has been trying hard for the couple to avoid any potential wedding superstition. If having a wedding is that dangerous, then I'd rather stay single, although I don't need the help of a wedding curse for that. We then see what appears to be a flashback of Helen's wedding and the beginning of the curse. During the ceremony, the church bells won't stop ringing. They go check on the bell ringer and find his dead body courtesy of a jump scare. A young girl named Joya suddenly wakes up and appears to have witnessed the previous scene in her dreams. This is where the film can sort of get a little confusing. It constantly switches back and forth from both storylines throughout the entire runtime. Joya is Sandy's niece as her mother Paula is Dale's cousin from out of town. Joya is spiritually sensitive and ominously drawn to Helen's house. She gets a brief vision of a wedding reception that took place, which leads to a decent jump scare. It's less of a jump scare and more of an overly dramatic reaction to what happened. She then tries telling Sandy what she saw and does the cliche without actually saying anything. A brief but decent scare that does a good job establishing Joya's sensitivity. We jump to the previous wedding reception where the lights suddenly go out when everyone is having fun. They continue slow dancing in the dark and the bride notices a creepy flower girl whose face we don't see. The flower girl's appearance is brief but very ominous. Sandy's dad Fred arrives after her party as he had business to attend to. Better late than non-existent. Her parents start arguing, causing her mother to cry, which is the first indication that their marriage is more than a little rocky. The other couple is expecting a child that was conceived before the marriage. She's worried about what his family will think, but they're already married now. The night before her wedding, Sandy is lying in bed and hears a noise outside her room. Her window is wide open, giving us a full view into Helen's bedroom. We simultaneously hear a crashing noise and the film switches back to the other storyline. This is when the switching back and forth became a little irritating. The scare with the flower girl in Helen's room was actually very well crafted. The editing made it so that the flower girl appeared right as the crashing sound happened, which was an odd choice that took away from the effectiveness of the scare. This happens a couple more times throughout the film. It eventually serves the story well, but ends up affecting its overall scare score. The lights start flickering and the husband named Brian goes to check it out. They find the living room completely trashed, and the flower girl can briefly be seen lurking behind a cabinet. It's clear that the couple's wedding somehow became cursed, and they are being stalked by the flower girl. While the flower girl sightings are genuinely creepy, they would be even better with a bit more subtlety. While Brian's wife cleans up the mess, she notices her wedding veil is missing. We get a wholesome home video of Sandy and Dale preparing for the happiest day of their lives, while the other couple experiences a terrible tragedy. Sandy's wedding ceremony is underway, and Brian decides to work on the roof of his house with the wrong pair of shoes. And by that I mean barefoot. While his wife cooks, withered flower petals blow into the house, the same withered flower petals that were seen at the bell ringer's death. As Sandy and Dale say their solemn vows, Sandy experiences an ominous nosebleed. The moment Sandy and Dale say "I do" to getting married, Brian says "I do" to falling off the roof. Sandy and Joya then both see the flower girl standing behind the priest. The newlywed couple happily walk out of the church as Brian is rushed to the emergency room. Sandy and Dale are pronounced man and wife, as Brian is pronounced as the newest resident of the afterlife. This entire scene was full of tension and very well done. It's also where the storytelling choice of constantly switching between two storylines begins to make sense. The film uses it to hide a pretty good twist and eventually brings the two stories together nicely. During the reception, Sandy tries picking up her handkerchief, but the flower girl quickly grabs it. As two of Sandy's relatives, Betsy and Edith, leave the reception, she and Joya see the flower girl in the backseat of their van. The driver notices her in the rearview mirror, where we get the flower girl face reveal. She then appears in the car directly in front of them before a jump scare causes the vehicle to crash. This was a strong scare scene that shows that no family member is safe around the flower girl.
Had your kids, had your wife, and had your husband.
I wasn't expecting a face reveal so soon, which made it scarier. Brian's wife stays with him at the morgue, which doesn't sound like a great idea. The lights go out and the camera focuses on Brian's face in pitch darkness, which is some frightening stuff. The door slowly opens and withered flower petals come blowing in. The terrified wife calls out to her dead husband, which leads to a jump scare. Brian's mother arrives and immediately blames his wife for what happened. She looks back at the table and finds Brian's body missing and her wedding veil in his place. The best part of this scare scene was the quiet and dark zoom in onto Brian's face. It felt really unnerving and created a chilling atmosphere. Everything else was fairly standard but establishes an important aspect of the curse. Those claimed by the wedding curse are replaced with the symbolic items from the wedding. After the car crash, the driver is rescued, but Betsy and Edith are missing and Sandy's veil is found inside the van. Joya reveals she's been having terrible visions ever since she saw Helen's house. She believes that Helen is linked to the events that are taking place. Sandy is completely distraught and her mother confirms that she placed the veil inside of a box. Brian's wife returns home and we meet her brother Erning, played by John Hilario, who gives a more subdued performance here compared to his character Dario in The Healing. Dale tries comforting Sandy and reassures her that they strictly avoided all superstitions before the wedding. I actually really like Dale's character, portrayed by actor Wendell Ramos. He seems like a really down-to-earth, level-headed character and a great companion for Sandy.
Huwag mo na makalimutan yun, Sandy.
That night, the widow sees someone climbing up the ladder to the roof. She believes it to be Brian and runs outside. She sees Brian's spirit walk into the forest and follows after him. Her cousins run after her, and it was at this point I realized that we don't yet know the widow's name. The film is purposely trying to make the audience think they are watching what happened to Helen. In reality, Brian's widow and her wedding curse are totally separate from Helen, but mysteriously related to Sandy. As Sandy lies in bed, she hears strange noises coming from Helen's room. She struggles getting her window open, which leads to a predictable yet still effective jump scare. The flower girl then appears over Dale's body and Sandy freaks out. Chris Aquino gives a really great performance in the film and her reaction in this scene really sells the moment. The unnamed widow follows Brian into the woods and he disappears. She then sees the word help etched into a tree. Her cousin Grace follows behind her and they see the flower girl standing there menacingly while dropping withered flower petals. These petals are clearly a symbol of death, as her aunt suffers the deadly consequences of crossing the road without looking both ways. They look under the bus and find a wedding cord instead of the aunt. At the same time, Sandy and Dale discover that her wedding bouquet has turned completely black. The police say there is nothing they can do about the bus accident because they didn't find a body. Brian's mother comes in and says that the widow has brought a curse upon the family. Against Paolo's wishes, Sandy asks Joya for help to figure out what's going on. Joya says she saw Helen again and references the bus accident. She says that Sandy's wedding is cursed and that everything that happened with Helen is now happening to her. Paula doesn't want Joya to get involved but reluctantly agrees when her daughter stands up for herself. The widow is shown photos of her wedding and the faces of the curse's victims have eerily faded away. Sandy and Dale visit Helen's abandoned house with Joya, who gets some creepy visions while exploring the house. One of those visions are of an old man gasping in bed, most likely Helen's father, who passed away 3 months before her wedding. Helen's ghost is seen walking behind them before the flower girl makes another scary appearance.
Hindi ko pa alam. Anak, ano yun? Ano yun?
They find Helen's wedding photos as the caretaker Caesar describes the terrible fate that befell her family because of the wedding curse. A curse that could have been avoided if she had postponed her wedding until a year after her father's passing. After her wedding, her husband died in a plane crash. She went searching for his body and never returned. This is the moment we realize that Joya has not been seeing visions of Helen but of someone completely different. In the wedding photos, the faces of the couple and their family also disappeared. Helen's spirit appears and Joya tries communicating with her. Helen eerily turns towards her and briefly possesses Joya. Sandy looks into the mirror and sees the flower girl holding a white box full of her wedding items. She barely has any time to react as Paula screams out because Joya fell to the ground and is now shaking. Helen's spirit speaks through Joya and tells Sandy that their wedding curses have nothing to do with one another. Paula says that a wedding can become cursed if siblings get married in the same year. Sandy's mom starts to cry and says that Sandy's father lied to her. This all may sound very confusing, but everything is about to come together nicely and make a lot more sense. The entire scene inside of Helen's house was not only scary but also very fun. The atmosphere the moment they step inside the house is chilling. I really like that with each scare in this scene, we get closer to the truth of what's really going on, giving a lot more purpose and weight to the scares. Sandy looks at her wedding photos and the heads of those marked by the curse are missing. Those include Betsy, Edith, Dale, and Sandy herself.
Masama ang ibig sabihin ng mga to.
Sandy's mom confronts her dad Fred about something that occurred years ago. Fred reveals to Sandy that he once cheated on her mom with a mistress named Claudia. He eventually left Claudia by writing a letter, leaving her a bit of money, and never looked back. It turns out he had a child with Claudia named Diana, Sandy's half-sister, whose story we've unknowingly been following this whole time. What initially appeared as flashbacks following Helen's wedding curse was Diana's story happening in real time. Neither sister knew of each other's existence and they both had weddings around the same time, causing both of their weddings to become cursed. I really like this twist, which came with Diana's name finally being revealed. The switching back and forth between stories now makes a lot more sense, and I appreciate the unique way they chose to tell the story. Diana's mother-in-law says that if Brian's body isn't found, she is going to have to leave his house. The mother-in-law has been so scummy the entire time and is by far the worst character in the film. Diana visits the local subject matter expert on curses named Dante. He says the curse will be over when the body of a cursed family member does not disappear. Dante tells her that she must go find her father, but Diana hasn't seen him since he left her. Since Diana and Sandy got married in the same year, they must both come to him with the symbols of their marriages to end the curse. He reveals that Diana's head is only partially gone in the wedding photos because the curse is going to claim her unborn child. Old man Jenkins here would make one heck of a pregnancy test. Tessie is tired of having dealt with Fred's bullshit all these years and decides to finally leave him. She walks off alone in the middle of the night, which can only lead to bad things. A drunk guy crashing into a construction site which ends up collapsing and falling on top of her, to be exact. They remove the rubble and find the wedding cord in her place. Just to be clear, the flower girl and her curse are extremely vicious. The victims of the curse are actually dead and are never coming back. Diana is reluctant to seek out the other side of her family, but Erning says that it's the only way to end the curse and save her child. Even though he witnessed what happened, Fred refuses to accept what's truly going on and believes that Tessie is going to come back. As Diana is hanging clothes outside, Brian's ghost can be seen watching her from inside the house. We then get a really suspenseful scare as his face appears on a white sheet. She reaches out to him and the film cuts to Sandy and Dale going to look for Diana. This is where the constant switching back and forth becomes a double-edged sword for me. I understand the purpose behind it and it services the story really well. However, it starts to become a problem when suspenseful scenes like this one are suddenly cut off. off. This happens a few times during the film and negatively affects the scare level of some scenes. Joya tells Sandy that once she finds her sister, the two should not separate. She also says that one of them must make a sacrifice to end the curse. As Sandy and Dale head into the countryside to look for Diana, Diana and Grace want to head to the city to find Sandy. Dale and Sandy stop to rest at a nice resort, which is the closest thing they've gotten to a honeymoon since getting married. Dale looks out at the pool outside their room, and I couldn't help but to feel bad for the man. It seems like he did his best to avoid all wedding superstitions so he and Sandy could live happily ever after. Since the wedding became cursed anyways, he's been trying everything he can to make things right. He also gives us the mandatory Asian horror movie shower scene. I love Dale. Sandy gets a call from her dad as the lights suddenly go out and the flower girl can briefly be seen behind her. Dale is still taking a shower, and this scene reminded me of one of my biggest childhood fears: the lights going out while I'm taking a shower. That's why I always bring a flashlight with me into the shower. The flower girl appears behind the shower curtain and gives Dale and the audience a proper scare. Withered flower petals appear in the tub, and this is starting to become a very dark yet still romantic honeymoon. Dale wises up and quickly washes all the shampoo out of his hair before getting out. Sandy makes her way back to their room and also sees several withered flower petals on the ground, which made my heart sink for Dale. He calls out to Sandy in a half-naked state and the phone suddenly rings. He picks up the phone and hears a distorted voice on the other end. He looks out of the window and sees the flower girl from inside of Helen's house. In a terrifying moment most likely inspired by Ringu, the flower girl crawls her way into the room. Dale tries getting away, but she blocks all the exits and holds a wedding candle up to his face. Right as Sandy is about to enter the room, we see the flower girl's horrifying face very clearly as the candle lights up and Dale is tragically claimed by the curse. Sandy enters the room and sees the candle on the ground before the scene quickly transitions back to Diana. I saw this as a missed opportunity to get a gut-wrenching emotional reaction from Sandy to Dale's death. Immediately cutting away as she enters the room sort of takes away from the impact of his death, which is a real shame. Dale deserved better. The entire scene leading up to his death, however, was excellent. The build-up is very suspenseful and also has a lot of emotional weight to it. The moment Dale looked out at the pool thinking about the honeymoon he could have had with Sandy, I knew his time was coming to an end. His encounter with the flower girl is truly horrifying, especially since it's also the first time we actually see the flower girl getting her hands dirty. She knew Dale was too much of a Giga Chad and had to take matters into her own hands. And yes, I've unfortunately been consuming brain rot. To be fair, the reason why they cut to Diana right after Dale's death is to show that Sandy and Diana's curses are one and the same. As the candle got lit in front of Dale, a candle went out where Diana was. Something similar happened earlier when Sandy's wedding candle was lit and Diana's stove erupted at the same time just before Brian's death. Sandy tells her dad what happened to Dale and Fred says he's going to go over there. Diana and Grace walk along a dark street where we get one of the more creative scares I've seen in a while. The flower girl's shadow appears on the ground and spreads the flower petals before disappearing. A hand suddenly grabs Grace from the trees and she is pulled into the forest by the spirit of her own mother. Diana's wedding candle then appears in her spot. A brief but effective scare scene with a very creative moment I really enjoyed. Sandy goes to the police station about Dale's disappearance and the lights go out. Diana is at the exact same police station for Grace's disappearance. The furniture starts to move on its own and everyone rushes out of the building. The flower girl appears to both sisters before Sandy accidentally reverses her car into Diana amidst the chaos. She helps her up and gives her a ride to avoid that phone call from Jim Adler. Sandy tells her she is looking for a woman named Diana and the two quickly realize that they are long-lost sisters. Diana is overcome with emotion and realizes that the flower girl purposely brought the two together. They bring each other up to speed and bond over the fact that they both just lost their husbands. Ayya. They go to Diana's house and Sandy learns that her mother died at a young age. In YouTube-friendly baby NPC dialogue, she died on her own terms after Fred left her. Who am I kidding? This is the horror mine. I don't bow down to the system. Diana's mother committed Diana's mother was nowhere to be found after Fred left her. We then get a fake-out jump scare that actually got me. The man is covered in banana leaves and mud and is asking for money to purchase candles for the Taong Putik festival. The festival is celebrated in the barrio of Bibiklat where Diana is from. For those who want to know more, I linked an article about the festival in the description. They return to Dante, who says that when siblings get married in the same year, one will experience good fortune and the other misfortune, which doesn't make a lot of sense because they both both been terrorized by the curse. Just like Joya told Sandy, he says that one of the sisters has to make a sacrifice. Diana brings out her symbolic wedding items that Sandy must throw into the fire. She burns the veil, candles, and cord, but when she tosses the silver coins in, the fire goes out. The flower girl suddenly emerges from Dante's body and he tells them to grab the coins and to look for the place where it all began. He then suffers the same fate as every other subject matter expert that has tried to stop a deadly curse. Since Diana got married first, they decide to head to the church where she got married. Dale's ghost suddenly appears via jump scare and they run out of the car. The flower girl reappears in his place, showing that she is using the image of their dead loved ones to torment them. Fred drives into town as both he and his daughter struggle to get through the large festival crowd of the followers of St. John. They make it to the church with the flower girl hot on their tail in a very suspenseful scene. The withered flower petals come blowing in and the flower girl's shadow is seen directly below them. The final two targets of the curse are Sandy and Diana's unborn child. Sandy tries destroying the silver coins, but the move has no effect. The flower girl emerges holding Sandy's coins and looks absolutely menacing. She approaches them holding out her hand like the government on April 15th, and Sandy decides to make the ultimate sacrifice. In a move that I wasn't expecting, Sandy grabs a hold of the flower girl and jumps from the bell tower to save Diana and her baby. The festival goers gather around Sandy as Diana cries over her sister's dead body. This was an intense climax with extremely high stakes that ended in a way I wasn't expecting. I hate that Sandy had to go out like that, but she died as a hero. Sandy was a great character and I wish we could have had more interactions between her and Diana, who's an equally good character. Fred unknowingly walks past Diana before having a truly gut-wrenching reaction to Sandy's death. He finally comes face to face with his remaining child and apologizes for how he treated her and everyone else. Can I get some of that? Diana says she is thankful for having a sister like Sandy and knows she was an amazing person. With the curse seemingly over, she embraces her father in a bittersweet, emotional moment. But y'all should know the drill by now. This film has 3 minutes left of runtime, which is more than enough time for things to go wrong. Diana moves in with her dad and stays in Sandy's old room. She looks at a photo of Sandy and Dale's wedding, then hears a noise outside the window. She opens it and looks straight into Helen's room, but only sees herself in the mirror. In the film's final scene, Fred sits alone in his room reflecting on all the events that just took place. The rocking chair behind him starts moving on its own and the ghosts of Sandy and Tessie appear inside the room. Fred screams off screen, showing that the curse isn't over as the movie ends. Pardon my French, ladies and gentlemen, but what the fuck, dude? This means that Sandy's sacrifice was for nothing and that there is no way to truly put an end to the wedding curse. I feel that Asian horror movie curses are way too powerful sometimes, just because. It makes them scarier in a sense, but it would be nice to see the main character win once in a while. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was SUKOB. My friends, this was an excellent horror film and one of the best I have seen from the Philippines. SUKOB had an excellent plot and a unique style of storytelling. I was truly engaged in the narrative and was really rooting for the characters, specifically Sandy, Dale, and Diana. While the constant switching from both storylines was annoying at first, it served a clear purpose that really benefited the story, although it did negatively impact the scare factor of some scenes, but only a few times. The film was filled with a wide variety of scares that made it a really fun experience that kept me on the edge of my seat. Yes, there were a few predictable jump scares, but none of them felt unnecessary like they typically do in other horror movies. Some of the jump scares, like the one in the morgue, had really nice build-ups and were crafted nicely, which made them really effective. The film also offers plenty of creative and genuinely frightening scares throughout its entire duration, earning SUKOB a great scare score of 83%, which is one of the highest scores I've given in quite a while. I highly recommend SUKOB to any horror movie fan looking for a genuinely scary fun time. The scariest scene in the film is Dale's tragic demise. It has a really tense build-up because we all know what's coming but don't want it to happen to the best character in the film. Seeing the flower girl through the resort window but her actually being inside Helen's room is a brilliant oh shit moment. Her crawling into the hotel room Sadako style is the cherry on top of an excellent scare scene. But, as always, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Thank you all for tuning in, and I cannot wait to see y'all right back here in the horror mine. Y'all stick around.